Well now, are you settled? Very good. So now let's do our little trick. Let your eyes soften. Don't close them fully, just resting, and let the stillness of the room settle around you. And you'll find that the longer you try to stay awake, the sooner sleep will come. Let your jaw loosen. Let your breath slow and spread gently through your chest. Let your spine sink deeper into the mattress, as if the dark is holding you steady. And if you hear a child giggling somewhere in the room, don't worry. They only laugh when they're curious, and they always stop when you listen closely. Now, let's begin tonight's tale. Did you ever try and look through a window at night? You stand there with the light on behind you, your hand on the cold frame. You think you're looking out, but you're not. You're looking at yourself. Your own pale face floats in the glass with the room behind you, and the darkness outside sits behind that, watching, quiet. If you've ever stood there long enough, you'll know the feeling. You start to wonder if something out there might be moving toward you and you wouldn't see it. Not really. Not until it was right up at the pane. That's where this story sits. Out along the marsh road into Nina, there was a narrow 2-story farmhouse with a crooked chimney and a small back field. In that house lived Queeveen Nolan, 12 years old, and his father, Tom. Most evenings, when the work was done, Queeveen drifted to the back window and looked out at the field. At the far end, near the hedge, stood a scarecrow. It had never sat right with him, not because of the hat or the coat, but because of the face. The face was a mask his stepmother had made. Her name was Maureen. She came into the house when he was still small, after his own mother died. To the neighbors, she was all smiles and folded hands, a good match, they said, a second chance for Tom, a decent woman to help raise the boy. Inside the house, though, when the door was shut, things were different. She had a strap she kept by the stove, a plain leather belt. It came out when Queeveen spoke back, when he spilled tea for looking too smart. There didn't seem to be much difference between them. "Not a word to your father," she'd say afterwards, voice low and calm as she wiped the tears off his face a little too hard. "You'd only upset him. We don't want your father upset, do we?" He learned to shake his head. Maureen had this little knack that the people of the parish counted on her for. People came to her with bad teeth, not a proper dentist. They didn't have one of those out there. She had a pair of good pliers and a steady hand. "Hold still," she'd murmur, thumb under a jaw, fingers on a cheek. "It'll be over before you know it." Sometimes the person in the chair cried. Sometimes they fainted. Sometimes they didn't come back for a second try, but the pain went somewhere, and that was enough for most of them. The year she started coughing, she decided to do Halloween properly. She was thin by then, with a shawl over her shoulders and a tired kind of brightness in her eyes. One afternoon, she sat at the table with strips of cloth and a bowl of plaster. She called Queeveen over to watch, being the kind mother that she was, or so she wanted people to believe. "See this?" she said. "We'll make a face. My face. You'll have great fun with it, won't you?" She greased her chin with a bit of fat, lay back, and pressed the wet strips over her own features, nose, cheeks, chin. He watched her lie there like a statue while the plaster set. When she peeled it off, there it was on the table, a hollow shell of her pale and blank. She laughed. "Look at that," she said. "I'm after making a copy of myself." She painted it that evening, just a little, a touch of colour at the lips, a hint at the eyes, enough to make it look like an old man's face or an old woman's, depending on the light. On Halloween night, she went out to the field with him. The wind tugged at her shawl. She tied the mask to the scarecrow's head with twine and pulled an old cap down over it. "There," she said. "The crows won't come near that." For once, she looked pleased about something. Not long after that, the coughing got worse. She took to the bed, and by spring, she was gone. Tom never moved the mask. The scarecrow stayed where it was, at the back hedge, with Maureen's painted face staring down the field. From the kitchen window, it always looked a little too much like she was still watching the house. Years slipped past, chores came and went, seasons turned. The scarecrow stayed. It never moved, not the post or the arms, not the coat or the hat. It was always there, a fixed shape against the far hedge. But the head. Sometimes, walking past the back window, Queeveen would feel it before he saw it, that tiny, prickling itch between his shoulders, the sense that someone's eyes were on him. He looked up quick, and for the briefest second he'd be certain the mask was turned a little, not much, just a fraction, as if it had been looking at the house and snapped back to the field when it realized he noticed. He'd blink, he'd look again. The head would be at its usual angle, chin down, eyes for the hedge and the crows. He told himself he was imagining it. He told himself that every time. In late October, word came that Tom's brother in Clonmel needed help mending a shed roof before the weather turned worse. Tom grumbled about it for a few days, then saddled the horse and packed a small bag. "It'll be 2 nights," he told Queeveen in the yard, one boot in the stirrup. "3 at the most. You're old enough to mind the place." He gave the boy 3 simple rules. "Keep the fire in, lock the back door at night, and if something puts the fear into you, go straight down to the Rhines. Don't sit there shaking in your skin, right?" "Right, Queeveen said. Tom swung up and rode off down the road. The sound of hooves faded. The house seemed to exhale. That evening, the yard went quiet, early. The world outside the back window turned the flat grey of ash. He lit the lantern in the kitchen and tried not to look out. He failed. Out at the hedge, the scarecrow stood where it always had. The body was the same, the line of the shoulders the same, the cap the same. The moulded face, though, seemed sharper, not different, just sharper. He stared at it until his eyes stung. "Stop," he muttered to himself, turning away. "It's a bundle of straw and an old hat." He tried to believe it. The first night alone, he lay in bed upstairs, looking at the dim outline of the beams. The house creaked. Now and then the wind moved soft under the slates. Ordinary sounds. He started to drift. Clink. He opened his eyes. That wasn't a creak. That was the sharp, neat sound of something hard hitting glass. A pebble on the window. He listened. Another. Clink, clink. 3 in all. He sat up, heart a little too fast. It'll be some young ones on the road, he told himself. A loose stone flicked up by a cart. Anything except what his mind was trying to suggest. He swung his legs out of bed. The boards were cold under his feet. He padded down the staircase, hands sliding along the rail, and walked the hall toward the back. The lantern on the little side table still burned, throwing a soft circle of light around itself. The window at the end of the hall was a black rectangle with his own reflection faint in it. He walked closer. With each step, the boy in the glass walked toward him too, pale face, wide eyes, hair stuck up from the pillow. The lantern's glow hung behind the ghost version of him like a halo. He reached the window, laid his fingers against the glass, leaned in, trying to see past himself. Nothing. The outside was only darkness washed over by his own shape. He could just about make out the pale strip of yard and far off the faint suggestion of hedge and field. No movement. He stayed there, holding his breath, waiting for another pebble. The silence stretched. After a while, he stepped back. Wind, he said under his breath, though he knew wind didn't throw stones. He went upstairs and lay awake until morning. The next day, he avoided the back window for as long as he could, fed the hens, swept the floor, checked the fire, anything to keep his eyes away from that patch of glass. But habits are strong things. By late afternoon, he found himself standing there again, bowl in hand, looking out. The scarecrow was at the hedge exactly where it had always stood. Only the light had changed, a sideways kind of light that picked out the details of the mask under the cap. For the first time in years, he saw it clear, the cracked lines of the plaster, the slight twist of the mouth, the brush marks where she'd added color around the lips, the faint, fake kindness painted into the corner of the eyes. A memory rose up without asking permission. Him in the chair by the fire, small legs kicking, her hand hard under his jaw. "Hold still," she said, steel on her breath, pliers in her fist. "Open wider," I said, "wider. Do you want that rot to go to the bone?" The glint of the metal, the bite of it on his tooth, the hot shocking pain as it pulled free, and the taste of blood. Later, that same evening, after his father had gone out to the barn, the strap came down on his back over something small, he didn't even remember what. "Not a word to your father," she said, voice low, face close, the same painted softness at the edges of her mouth. The mask on the scarecrow wore that expression now, stuck there staring down the field. He put the bowl down. He didn't eat much that day. The second night, the Pebbles came earlier. He lay on the bed, in his clothes this time, not even pretending to sleep. Clink. It came clear through the boards of stone and glass, sharp, clean, close. He sat up. Clink, clink. 3 in a row, all at the same pain. He stood and listened for a laugh, a shout, anything that would make this simple, some neighbour's child, some drunk on the road. There was only the stove settling in the kitchen. He went down again. The hall felt longer now. The wind at the end looked more like a picture than something real. He walked toward it. His reflection grew step by step. The lantern behind him painted his shoulders and head into the glass like a ghost pinned there. He reached the pane and waited. Nothing moved beyond himself, no darker shape or flicker. Something small bopped off the outside of the glass and fell away. He heard it rather than saw it. A pebble, it had to be. He stayed there until his legs felt weak, then he stepped back. And when he turned away, he had the oddest sensation, like a face had been right up against the other side of the window the whole time, inches from his, just hidden behind his own reflection. He didn't like that thought. He didn't sleep at all. On the third night, the air changed. It felt heavier somehow. He lit the lanterns earlier, made sure the back door was bolted, checked the windows twice. "Stop it, would you?" he muttered to himself once or twice. "You're letting these stories get to you." He sat at the table with his hands around a mug gone cold. The house ticked. The fire gave a low sigh. The dark pressed at the window panes. Then it came. Clink. He flinched. The sound was as clear now as his own name, a pebble hitting glass right at the back of the house. He held still, eyes on the doorway. Another came, a little sharper. Clink. This time there was a follow-on sound, a tiny skitter on the floorboards in the hall, like something bouncing once then coming to rest. He stood. His knees didn't feel right under him. He walked into the hall. The lantern on the little table burned steady. The back window was a dark mirror at the end, his faint shape already there. On the floor, halfway down, lay a small, white object. It hadn't come from inside. It had come in from the window, caught the frame just right and fallen in through the tiny gap at the bottom where the wood had shrunk over the years. He bent down and picked it up. Smooth, hard, and oddly warm from the impact. Not a pebble or a chip of plaster. A tooth. A human tooth. His hand shook. He turned it over, saw the root on one end, the flat chewing surface on the other. All those nights, all those neat, hard clinks on the glass, he'd been picturing stones. He wasn't so sure now. He put the tooth on the table by the lantern. It looked very small there, very ordinary. That made it worse. He turned, drawn to the back window, even though every part of him wanted to walk the other way. He walked toward the glass. The lantern's glow followed him, laying his shadow along the boards. His reflection waited at the end. His face looked paler than ever, skin stretched thin over his cheekbones, eyes too wide. The ghost version of him stepped closer with every pace. He stopped an arm's length from the pane. Outside there was only darkness. Inside the hall stretched away behind him in the glass. He leaned forward, squinting, trying to see past his own face. The light was wrong. He could make out the vague band of the yard, the darker line of the hedge, but nothing else. Then, from somewhere just below the bottom edge of the window, a shape began to rise. At first, he thought it was some trick of the glass, but the shape had color. It floated up until it was level with his chest in the pane. Tom's severed head, inches from his own face. The hand that held it was wrapped in rags, stiff straws stuck out of the wrist. He didn't need to see the rest of the scarecrow to know it was there, just beyond the sill, body pressed in against the outer wall. Somewhere above the frame, in the dark, the mask of Maureen's face would be bending into, paint cracked, eyes dead. All he could see was Tom's head and the hands. The second hand came up on the far side of the head. Fingers of rag and straw gripped a pair of pliers. The jaws of the pliers were clamped around one of Tom's teeth, like the one on the table behind him, like the ones that had been clinking off the glass for nights. His breath fogged a small circle on the pane. Outside, the scarecrow's hand squeezed. The pliers gave a quick jerk, and the tooth came free. "Don't upset your father now." The story doesn't follow Queeving past that. It ends where it should, with the boy standing inches from his own reflection and a scarecrow outside the window, holding a severed head up to the glass, pulling out one last tooth, while the night presses close against both sides of the pane. Mossy Reynolds didn't hate people, he just hated when they came near him. Visitors only ever brought trouble, noise, opinions, or requests, things Mossy avoided the way other men avoid hot coals. He lived alone by the bog road for a reason. The world hadn't done him any favors, he didn't see why he should offer it tea. He was a man of rules, old rules, country rules. Don't whistle indoors, don't stir a cup the wrong way, salute lone magpies, never put new shoes on the table. And if an omen showed itself, Mossy listened, because signs weren't signs for nothing. So when his fork slipped from his hand and rang against the flagstones, Mossy went still. A dropped fork meant a visitor. He held his breath. Knock, knock. He stared at the door, wishing he could disappear into the wall. He opened it a crack. "Mossy!" Betty beamed, pushing past him before he could protest. Betty, his sister-in-law, cheerful, loud, red-haired. Of course she was red-haired and blissfully immune to every superstition ever whispered across Ireland. She moved through omens like a cow, through nettles, unbothered and oblivious. Mossy whispered a prayer no one heard. "Cold out there?" she said, plopping a bag onto his table. Out came a pair of brand new shoes, which she placed proudly on the tablecloth like trophies. Mossy grabbed his chest. Betty, please, the table." "Oh, hush," she said, waving him off. "It's grand." It was not grand. New shoes on the table invited bad luck. Everyone knew that. "Put the kettle on, Mossy. I'm frozen." Mossy swallowed back a rising scream. While she wandered his kitchen, she casually mentioned the morning's events. She'd passed a lone magpie at the gate and didn't bother saluting it. She'd counted the cars in a funeral procession on the way over. Only 9, isn't that gas? She dropped salt in Mrs. Burns' shop and laughed it off. She'd tripped on the path and blamed gremlins. She whistled all the way down the lane. Mossy felt his intestines twist. Betty had walked through the 7 plagues of bad luck before breakfast. Mossy poured the tea with trembling hands. Betty stirred hers twice, clockwise, fine, then once counterclockwise. Mossy choked. Why would you stir it like that?" "Like what?" "Backwards." She shrugged. "Just felt like it." He stared at her, helpless, as if she'd invited a demon to sit at the table. Then she began to whistle, indoors, a bright, airy little tune. Mossy slapped his hands over his ears. "Would you stop?" "Stop what?" "The whistling." Betty laughed. "You need a hobby, Mossy. You can't be letting old wives' tales bully you." But old wives' tales had teeth. Mossy knew they did. Betty bustled to the sink. "Where's your washbowl? Me hands are frozen." "Betty, no." Too late. She plunged her hands into his wash water, the same water he'd used moments before. 2 people using the same wash water without spitting in it first meant a fight was destined to happen. Mossy sagged in despair. Betty dried her hands on his best towel, chatting away about the neighbors, the weather, the price of milk, all while leaving invisible trails of bad luck behind her like muddy footprints. When she finally left, Mossy closed the door and leaned against it. He had survived the visit, but barely. 3 days later, the church bell rang slow over Clonlara. Mossy sat in the last pew, stiff as a board, staring at the coffin at the front of the church. Betty had died suddenly. A turn, they said, dropped in her kitchen chair mid-breakfast. Mossy didn't speak to anyone. He wasn't sure he could. His stomach was in knots. He kept replaying the omens she had broken in his house, every rule he'd ever lived by, trampled, and now this. He stared straight ahead until the voices of the 3 old women in the pew before him drifted back. He didn't mean to listen, but once he'd heard the first line, he couldn't stop. I told her, whispered the first woman. I told her herself, don't be whistling in my house, but she only laughed. She put her new shoes on my table, said the second. Right down on the good cloth, I nearly had a stroke. She counted the funeral cars outside the shop, said the third. I saw her. I thought, well, now that'll bring something down on her. Mossy caught his breath. These were the same omens she had broken in his house, but more kept coming. She tripped twice on her way to mine, said the first. Said she wasn't watching the path. She spilled salt on my kitchen floor, said the second. She told me she passed a magpie on its own and didn't salute it, said the third. The three women tutted in perfect harmony. Sure, she was drawing bad luck from every direction. Dancing in it, laughing at it. Mossy rubbed his face, sweating. Betty hadn't broken omens once. She had broken them everywhere she had gone. Not just Mossy's house, every path, every shop, every minute of that cursed day. He shivered. The priest began the final prayer. Mossy bowed his head. He wished he could go home. He wished the day was over. He wished he hadn't heard of omens or curses or the way bad luck crawls after a person. He wished. A gentle tap on his sleeve. He looked up. An elderly woman beside him smiled apologetically. Love, would you mind passing me handbag? It slipped under your seat. Mossy swallowed, nodded, and bent to reach it. As he pulled the bag upward, something small tumbled from it. Crack. It hit the stone floor and shattered. Her makeup mirror. Silence washed across the pews. The three old women in front of him slowly turned their heads. Their eyes widened. One blessed herself, then another, then the third. Mossy stared at the shards on the floor. 7 years, bad luck, right there at his feet. He gulped. And the last thing he heard before the choir began the closing hymn was one of the old women whispering, God help that man. And when Mossy stepped out after the funeral, off he went to face the next 7 years. There are stories, quiet ones, about a kind of fairy folk who stayed too long among people. They weren't like the wild ones in the hills, and they weren't like saints or angels either. They walked in boots, wore coats, drank in pubs. But time didn't touch them the way it touched everyone else. Old men in some parishes used to call them Fervranaha, watchers. They didn't watch men alone. They watched houses. They watched how a family came by its luck and how that luck would be paid for. Most people never met one. One man did. The pub was half empty. Rain needled at the window glass. A turf fire burned low in the grate, giving off more smell than heat. Costello, the barman, wiped the counter with a cloth that had seen better days. The door swung open with a rush of cold air and wet boots. "Evening to you, Costello," came a bright, confident voice. "God help anyone out on the road tonight." Costello didn't need to look up to know who it was. "Evening, Mr. Lally," he said. "You'll have your usual—" "Costello," the man said, taking off his hat. "When I'm in here, it's Finbar, all right? But yes, the usual." He was in his 40s, neat mustache, coat too fine for the weather, scarf arranged like he had thought about it. This was Finbar Lally, barrister, member of Parliament, and proud of it. He had posters on every wall in the district. Costello poured a whiskey. "There you are," he said. "How goes the business of the country?" Finbar smiled. "Busy," he said. "Always busy. We're on the verge of great reforms, Costello, great reforms." He turned to take stock of the room, a pair of farm hands by the fire, an old fellow sleeping into his pint, and at the far end of the bar, half in shadow, a single figure with a wide-brimmed black hat, coat collar up, hands wrapped around a glass. Only one empty stool. Finbar took it. "Evening," he said, easy and smooth. The man in the hat gave the slightest nod but kept his eyes on the bar. Finbar rested his elbow on the counter and twisted slightly so he could half face him. "Hell of a night," he said. "Roads are muck. Can't imagine anyone out unless they've business." Silence. Finbar grinned. "I'm Finbar Lally," he said. "Member of this division. I sit in Parliament in Dublin, well, London for now, but that'll change soon enough. I'm home for a few days to meet the good people who put me here. Possibly you're one of them." No reply. Finbar cleared his throat and took a sip of whiskey. "Hard to tell with the brim and all," he went on. "Are you from round here, or just passing through?" The stranger's voice, when it came, was soft, like someone speaking in a church when nobody else is inside. "I'm just passing through," he said. There was no clear accent. It sounded old and young at the same time. "Well," Finbar said, "welcome to the constituency all the same. We're a fine, forward-thinking people. Industry, agriculture, railway links, and good stout, of course." He gave a little laugh at his own joke. The stranger didn't laugh. He didn't move. He lifted his glass, took a quiet sip, and set it down again. "What line of work are you in yourself?" Finbar asked. "A farmer, trader, railway man, maybe?" The stranger turned the rim of the glass between his fingers. "I watch," he said. Finbar blinked. "You watch what?" "Houses." Finbar smirked. "Ah, you're one of Costello's philosophers," he said. "Every pub has one. You sit, you watch, you learn the whole world." He raised his glass in a mock salute. "Well, you'll have no shortage to watch these next few months. We'll have a campaign on meetings, speeches, improvements. We'll be moving a new programme through Parliament. We'll have talks about rate relief, land purchase, tenant protections. You'll hear my name a good deal." The stranger's head angled a fraction. "I already have," he said. Finbar sat a little straighter. "Is that so?" he said. "Have you seen one of my addresses? I gave a strong one in town last week. Plenty of applause. The people are tired of neglect. They want a man who can handle committees, get things done, navigate bills, a man with connections." He smiled to himself over his glass. The stranger's voice stayed calm. "You're a man with connections," he said quietly. Finbar liked the sound of that. "I am," he said. "I've put in the work. Years at the bar, committees, late nights, negotiations. I've had to be strategic. The system isn't simple. If you want results, you play the game." The stranger nodded the slightest bit. "You play it well," he said. Finbar brightened. "Thank you," he said. "For yourself," the stranger added. Finbar's smile thinned. "I beg your pardon?" The stranger traced a small ring of moisture on the counter with the bottom of his glass. "The game you play," he said. "You play it well, for yourself." Finbar laughed quietly. "Well, I hardly live in luxury," he said. "Public service doesn't pay what people think. I do what I must to protect the interest of the constituency. Some arrangements are necessary. People misunderstand the realities of governance." The stranger turned his glass again. "They misunderstand," he repeated softly. Because you explain it to them that way. Finbar frowned.
That sounds like a bit of an accusation now, friend.
It's not an accusation, the stranger said. It's an observation. He took another sip. You call yourself a servant of the people, he went on. But you think of yourself as a manager of them, a shepherd, perhaps. Finbar tilted his head.
Is there something wrong with that? He said. People look to me for guidance. They don't know the inner workings of legislation. I do. That's my job. I streamline things. I clear red tape. I bring home what I can.
The stranger's gaze stayed on the glass. You brought home the tannery contract, he said. Finbar's spine stiffened. What about it? You tendered it publicly, the stranger said. But privately you met O'Shea 3 nights before. You promised to weigh the board in his favour if he made certain contributions. He said the last word gently. Finbar's mouth went dry.
I don't appreciate slander, he said.
The stranger spoke as if reading from a quiet page. You told the board his design would employ more men. It wouldn't. You told the council his works would meet every standard. They don't. Waste runs into the little river behind the houses in Ballybrack. He paused. The children there cough at night. He added softly. Finbar swallowed.
I'm not responsible for where every pipe runs, he said. I handle policy, not plumbing. The tannery brings jobs, wages. You can't have development without some side effects. We're transitioning. These things take time.
The stranger's head tipped a little to the other side. And the new road, he said. Finbar frowned. What about it? You cut it through the low fields instead of along the ridge, the stranger said. Against the advice of the surveyor, you signed off anyway. Floodwater now runs straight towards the cottages.
We needed the road finished before winter, Finbar snapped. Do you have any idea how long those approvals take? I pushed it through for the sake of the district. If the surveyor miscalculated, we'll address it. There may be a small inquiry.
He took a strong swallow of the whiskey. A small inquiry, the stranger repeated calmly, like the one into the missing relief funds. Finbar's fingers tightened on the glass.
I don't know what you think you know, he said, but I've given my adult life to public service. I sit long hours in committee rooms. I travel back and forth. I address concerns. It's easy to sit there with your hat and your one drink and point fingers. You haven't the slightest idea what it takes to hold an office.
The stranger's reply was mild. I know, he said, what you voted for and what you voted against. Finbar gave a stiff little laugh.
Oh, he said, do you keep a notebook?
In my head, the stranger said. He lifted his head and listed. You voted for the closure of the smaller dispensary. You voted against the wage increase for road workers. You voted for the tax adjustment that took more from small shopkeepers. You voted against inquiry into the workhouse food. Finbar felt sweat rising under his collar. And you stood on the chapel steps, the stranger said, and told Eileen Barrett the world would do everything possible to save her home. Finbar went pale.
You leave that out, he said. Her case was complicated.
It was very simple, the stranger said. Silence pressed between them.
Are you in the opposition? Finbar snapped. Are you press?
I'm neither.
Then who are you?
The answer came soft and steady. I'm a man who watches houses. Finbar's breath shortened.
What does that even mean? He asked. You watch houses.
The stranger rested both hands on the counter. I watch how they rise, he said quietly. I watch what they're built on, and I watch how they pay. Finbar gave a nervous smile.
You sound like a very small sort of god.
The stranger shook his head. No, he said, I'm smaller than a god, but larger than you. Finbar tried to laugh, but it came out thin.
This is ridiculous, utter nonsense. If you're here to get a rise out of me, it won't work. I've dealt with 1,000 loud men. You're not the first.
I'm not here to raise your temper, the stranger replied gently. I'm here to speak of your house. Finbar froze.
What about my house?
You want a long career, the stranger said. You want to hold your seat. You want a ministry, influence, titles, applause. You want to retire on a full pension in a fine home with a private study and a fire always lit. Finbar swallowed hard.
There's nothing wrong with ambition, he muttered.
No, the stranger said. Nothing at all. He turned slightly, his hat tipping toward Finbar, but still hiding most of his face. How's your family, Finbar? He asked. Finbar stiffened.
My family is none of your business.
You have a wife, the stranger continued softly. Clara. She believed every word you spoke to her about duty and service. She still dreams of you being an honest man, a real man. Finbar's stomach twisted.
You leave her out of this.
You have a son, the stranger said. Michael, 9 years old. He plays with his toy soldiers on the sitting room rug while you read your papers. Finbar's throat bobbed. And a little girl, the stranger said. Anna, sweet child. She hides behind the stair when you come in late. She waits to hear which voice you bring in through the door. Finbar's voice cracked.
You cannot know their names.
The stranger's reply was simple. I watched when they were named, he said. I was standing at the window. You didn't see me. A cold tremor rolled through Finbar's chest.
You're mad, he whispered.
Perhaps, the stranger said, but listen anyway. He angled himself further toward Finbar, not close, not threatening, but steady and immovable, like something carved in stone. You sit in chambers and committee rooms, he said, and you think the choices you make live only on paper. You think the numbers in your columns are just figures. You tell yourself everyone takes a little. Everyone looks after their own. You call it negotiation, strategy, politics. He spoke in an even, unbroken rhythm. You approve contracts that foul water, he said. So your boy will drink clean and another man's boy will not. You block fair wages for labourers so there's more money in the fund for the land you plan to buy quietly through a cousin 3 towns away. You stand in front of hungry men and tell them to be patient while knowing your pantry's full. You call all of this the cost of progress. Finbar stared at the counter. He could hear his own pulse.
Well, what are you saying?
He whispered. The stranger folded his hands. The price doesn't always fall on the one who spent, he said. Sometimes it falls on the ones under his roof. Finbar blinked rapidly.
No, he said. No, if someone wants revenge on me, if someone wants to cause trouble, they'll come for me.
Men may, the stranger said, but I'm not here for you. Finbar's breath froze.
What?
The stranger spoke like a man reciting a prayer. You'll keep your seat, he said. You'll fend off scandal. You'll speak well in chamber. You'll cut deals. You'll retire with comfort and a plaque with your name. No cell will hold you. No hunger will touch you. You'll die believing you won. Finbar stared at him, eyes wide and desperate.
That's not a curse.
No, the stranger said. Not for you. He paused. But you're lying, he murmured. Your house. Finbar clenched his jaw.
What about them?
The stranger looked past him as though listening to something far away. The harm you steered away from yourself, he said. The cold you kept from your door, the hunger you kept from your table, the danger you pushed onto others so it wouldn't reach your children. All of it still has to land somewhere. His voice softened into something almost tender. Your boy, he said, he'll stand where you stand someday. Doors will open for him because of what you did. He will step through them, smiling. The stranger leaned his head. There will be a carriage, he murmured. One winter morning, a horse startled by something no one else can see. A wheel that splinters too early. A driver who grips the reins too late. And your son. Finbar's hand covered his mouth. Stop, he whispered. Your daughter, the stranger said, will love a man who will lose his work when a new act is passed. An act pushed through by men who learned from you how to hide the cost of progress. She'll sit by a cold fire and wonder how the world became so sharp. Finbar felt tears at the corner of his eyes. Please. And further down, the stranger said softly, one of your grandchildren will lie in a hospital ward built too thin, too cheaply. A ward that never received the funds it needed because men like you argued long ago that other things were more urgent. Finbar shook his head violently.
Why? He choked. Why them? Why not me? If there's some reckoning, some balancing, then take it from me. I made the choices. I signed the papers. Let it fall on me.
The stranger's reply was quiet, almost sorrowful. It already did, he said. You bent yourself long ago to carry the weight of what you've done. There's not much of you left to crush. Finbar stared, shaking. The stranger lifted the last swallow of his drink and let it settle on his tongue before setting the glass down. But a house, he said, a house endures. Blood carries forward. What a man wins by twisting others, his children inherit. The world will ask for its price from them. Finbar wiped his eyes with a trembling hand.
Well, what can I do? He whispered.
You can stop, the stranger said.
Resign?
Finbar asked, almost scoffing. You can stop the harm, the stranger said. You can stop signing your name to things that break other people's lives.
That won't save them, Finbar whispered, from carriages and accident hospitals.
No, the stranger agreed. It won't. Finbar looked up, lost.
Then what good is stopping?
The stranger considered him, and for the first time his voice warmed by degree. It may lessen the weight, he said. It may teach your son that there's a line which even a clever man mustn't cross. It may turn your daughter's memory of you softer. But I'm not offering terms, Finbar Lally. I'm telling you what's already on its way. He reached into his coat, took out a coin and turned it between his fingers. It caught the firelight strangely, as though the markings were older than the mint itself. He placed it gently on the counter and slid it toward Finbar. For when you need to remember, he said. Finbar stared at it, but didn't touch it.
Who are you?
He whispered. The stranger rose to his feet. His boots made no sound on the floorboards. Just a watcher, he said, of threads, of houses. He adjusted the brim of his hat. Then he spoke one last time, so softly the words barely reached Finbar's ears. You'll likely win your next election, he said. You'll stand in the paper with your fine smile. But every comfortable day you live will be barred against the days of those you love. He stepped toward the door. Finbar's voice broke.
My family,
he begged. The stranger paused with his hand on the handle. He didn't look back. They'll balance you, he said. Gruesomely. He opened the door. Rain blew in cold and sharp. When it swung shut again, he was gone. Costello continued wiping the counter, oblivious to what had passed only feet away. Finbar sat alone, staring at the coin, seeing instead the faces of his children, and realizing, with a trembling, sickening certainty, that there's not a single speech, deal, or clever turn left in him that could save them now. Some nights by the marsh were meant to be quiet, a bit of wind at the windows, a dog barking somewhere far off, the sort of night you forget as soon as you sleep. This wasn't that sort of night, because something tall was walking the yard behind the cottage, dragging chains over the stones. And that was how Chrissy and Callum ended up hiding in the old dry well. They were halfway down it, not at the bottom, crouched on a rough edge that ran around the inside. The well had gone dry years ago. Now it was just old rock and dust, a bit of straw someone had thrown in above their heads. A little timber roof covered the opening. A length of rope hung down past them, ending in an empty hook where a bucket used to be. Moonlight slipped through the gaps in the boards. It wasn't much, just enough to see Callum's pale face and wide eyes. He shivered. "Stop shaking," Chrissy whispered. "You're making the rope knock off the wall." "I can't help it," he whispered back. "My legs want to leave the country." "Well, they're still here, and if they keep banging that rope, he'll know we're in here as well," Chrissy said. "I didn't even want to come out," he muttered. "I was happy in there by the fire, but no, you had to look out the back door. If something's walking in our yard with chains, I'm not ignoring it," she said. "Maybe you could have ignored it quieter," Callum said. Overhead, stone dust trickled from between the rocks, somewhere close. A length of chain slid over the yard flagstones. Callum's head jerked up. "Oh, Jesus, he's coming." "Shut up, Callum," she hissed. "He'll hear you." He clamped his mouth shut and hunched lower, as if that would make him disappear. A little earlier that night, they had been where they were supposed to be, inside. Ma was over at Mrs. Loughlin bringing bread and talk. Da was away on the cart road and wouldn't be back till dawn. The two of them sat by the range, watching the last coal shine red. The cottage felt small and safe. Just them and the kettle and the tick of the cheap wall clock. Then there'd been a noise from the yard, long and low, like a chain being pulled over stone. "What was that?" Callum had said. "Old scrap," Chrissy had said at first. "Dad left something out, a plough bit or a grate or a—" The sound came again, closer this time. She'd gone to the back door and lifted the curtain a little. Out, by the shed, something was moving between the shadows. She saw it only for a heartbeat, tall as two men, thin as a stripped tree, wrapped in hanging chains that glimmered where moonlight touched them. A head bent forward, under the eaves of the shed, as if it was afraid of knocking slates. She let the curtain drop. "What is it?" Callum had whispered. "The Lan Slabhraí," Chrissy said. "The man of chains." "That's only a story," Callum said. "Then the story's walking around the hen house," Chrissy said. "Come on." "Where?" "Anywhere he's not." The nearest anywhere had been the well, so they ran for it, boots slipping a bit in the yard mud, hearts hammering. They scrambled over the lip, climbing down to the ledge, and pressed themselves into the stone. Then the chain sound had followed them. Now, here they were, dust in their hair, knees knocking, trying not to think about the fact that there was nothing between them and whatever walked the yard, except some old timber and a bit of rope. Tell me again what you saw," Callum whispered. "Exactly, no, maybe it's not as bad as I'm thinking." "It is," she said. "Well, just tell me anyway." She took a slow breath. "He's too tall," she said softly. "That's the first thing. Has to stoop under the shed roof, arms hanging down, long fingers, chains all over him. I couldn't see clothes on him at all, just a tangle of metal." "And what about his face?" "I don't think he has one you'd like," she said. "It's long, no proper eyes, no mouth that I could see, just marks where they should be, like someone rubbed them out with a thumb." Callum swallowed loud enough for it to echo. "Does he know we're here?" "He hears more than he sees," she said. "So stop giving him something to hear." "That's a nice way of saying you want me to shut up." "Yes," she said. "I want you to shut up." He went quiet for about 3 seconds. Then he whispered, "Chrissy." "What?" "I think I'm going to die." "You're not going to die." "I am, and it'll be your fault. Tell people." "I'll write it on your gravestone," she said. "Here lies Callum, who wouldn't shut his mouth, and the ghost got sick of listening." He made a face, even though she couldn't see it properly. Heavy steps crossed the yard above them. Each one made a small thud that came down the stone walls of the well. Dust drifted down in thin lines. The chain scraped after them. Then the steps changed direction. They came closer, over the well, right above their heads. The shadow between the roof boards thickened. Callum clutched at her sleeve. "He's on top of us," he whispered. "Will you stay still?" she whispered back. One of the boards above them gave a small creak. Some weight had settled on it, just a little. They heard the chains shift and clink, a soft sound, tired more than sharp. Then there was a sound like air being drawn through a doorway, not a breath, quiet, more like a house taking in a lungful before a storm. "He's sniffing," Callum mouthed. "He can't sniff," she mouthed back. "How do you know?" "Because that'd be worse, and I refuse it." They sat there, barely daring to swallow, while something impossibly tall leaned its faceless head over an old dry well to listen for 2 children hiding inside. Then, slowly, the shadow eased away. The weight lifted from the boards. The steps wandered off again. Neither of them moved. After a while, when their muscles started to ache, Chrissy let out a tiny breath and whisper, "All right?" "No," he said. "You're still alive, though." "Barely." They sat for another long minute. The yard was quiet now, except for the wind and the soft drag of chains as the thing walked further out. Then Chrissy muttered, "Oh no." "What now?" Callum whispered. "I have to pee." He stared at her in the thin light. "You're joking me." "I'm not." "And you pick now," he hissed, "of all the times in your life." She glared at him. "You know when you get a fright and it all drops into your bladder," she whispered. "Well, tell your bladder to wait," he whispered. "We're not exactly near a Jack's." "We're in a big hole," she said. "The whole world is a Jack's right now." You're not doing that beside me, he whispered urgently. I swear I'll climb out and take me chances with Mr. Tall and Cheney. Then don't talk about it, she whispered. You're making it worse. All right, he said quickly. Think of something else. Think of something that'll calm you, like a waterfall. A waterfall? Chrissy said. Sorry, I panicked. The chains sounded again. Not as close, but still in the air, moving past the door now by the sound of it. Callum's imagination filled in every gap, the long feet, the bony hands, the chains dragging, the faceless head turning this way and that, listening. His stomach clenched. A small, quiet parp escaped his back end. Chrissy turned her head slowly. Callum, I didn't mean it, he whispered, mortified. My arse has a mind of its own in these situations, no more than your bladder. You're unbelievable. It's the fear, he hissed. It squeezes everything. If he doesn't kill you, I will, she said. Then we'll die together. It'll be fine. Time stretched. Their legs went pins and needles, their backs hurt. The stone was cold, even through their clothes. Chrissy, he whispered. What? If he drags me out of here, don't let go. I'll be hanging on to you so hard I'll go too, she said. Well, that's nice. Don't start crying, she said. I can hear it building in your throat. He swallowed it down. For a while, there was only the faint sound of chains somewhere out there in the wind catching at the gable of the house. Then, out of nowhere, in a thin, shaky voice, Callum started to whisper sing. Silent night, holy night. Chrissy snapped her head around. What are you doing? Christmas carols calm me down, he whispered. It's April. He doesn't know that, Callum said. You think a chain ghost cares about what month you're singing Christmas carols? She said. It's annoying. Hum it in your head if you have to. He shut his mouth. His lips moved silently, though, and she could just make out the words. She rolled her eyes, but a bit of her was glad he was still talking about anything at all. They heard it before they felt anything. The chains had moved towards the back step of the cottage. That much they could tell from the direction. There was a loud clatter. Bollocks. The ghost had stepped into the mop bucket. Both of them went still. Did he just curse? Callum whispered. I think he did, Chrissy said. Ghosts in his head were supposed to wail or moan or sigh, not step in buckets and curse like exasperated farmhands. Somehow that made it worse. He's real, Callum whispered. He's real, and he's clumsy, and he's after finding mass things, she said. If he breaks that bucket, she'll kill him. They tried very hard not to laugh. It was the kind of laugh that would have turned into sobbing anyway. The chains shifted and scraped away from the house again. They heard the slow drag of them heading towards the gate and then back around, as if the creature was pacing the edges of the yard, searching for something you couldn't quite name. At some point, much later, they started to drift. Sleep crept in around the fear. It always does, in the end. The body gets fed up of being scared and decides it's tired instead. Callum's head tipped onto Chrissy's shoulder. She shrugged him off once, then gave up. He snored very quietly through his nose. She might have dozed, she wasn't sure. Everything blurred into one long shiver. Then the chains came back. They snapped her awake straight away. They sounded very close this time, right beside the well. She dug her fingers into Callum's arm. He woke with a start, but didn't dare speak. The steps came again, one by one, to the very edge. A long shadow cut across the gaps in the boards. Then something bent. The boards creaked a little. Between two of the slats in that narrow strip of sky, Chrissy saw it. Not the full thing, just the bottom half of the face, or what passed as one. Pale, stretched skin over long bone, No eyes, just smooth dents where they should have been, the hint of a mouth without an opening, chains hanging down past it, links shifting against each other. It was all she needed. She snapped her eyes shut and leaned back against the stone. Callum was shaking again. "What's he doing?" he mouthed. "Listening," she mouthed back. "Waiting for us to move." They didn't. The Lan Slabhraí stayed like that for what felt like forever, bent over the mouth of an empty well, wrapped in the chains it had died in, searching for something to take down with him. Then, finally, it straightened. The shadow eased away. The chains scraped off, slow and steady, out toward the marsh. The sound grew smaller. Then it was only the wind again. This time, when sleep came back, it took them properly. A soft light touched the stones when they woke. Chrissy's neck hurt. Callum's knees didn't want to move at first. They climbed, stiff and cold, up the rope and over the rim, and stood blinking in the yard. The grass was damp. The air smelled like a clean start. The marks were still there, though, faint grooves in the yard stones, as if something heavy had been dragging around all night. A long scuff near the back step where Ma's metal bucket lay on its side, a few links of rust left where a chain had knocked off the wall. They both stared at the yard for a long moment. "Are we telling anyone?" Callum said. "And say what?" she said. "That the man at chains came to our house, stepped in Ma's bucket and swore about it, then spent the night listening down a well?" When she put it like that, he had to admit it sounded mad. "Yeah, they'd never believe us," he said. "They'd laugh anyway," she said. "Dad would have a great time with it in the pub. We'd never hear the end of it." "Yeah, I don't want to be well boy forever," he muttered. They headed for the back door. Ma was moving around inside the house, now rattling cups, humming to herself, the ordinary sounds of a morning, like nothing strange had happened at all. At the doorstep, Callum stopped. "Chrissy." "What?" "Thanks," he said, "for dragging me out of there and for not legging it and leaving me in the well." "I'd never leave you," she said. "Who else would I have to call and eat it?" He smiled a bit at that. As they went into the warmth and the smell of porridge, the air lay quiet behind them. The well sat in its usual place. The bucket lay on its side by the step, drying in the weak sun. The chain marks were already fading where the damp lifted. And far out, over the marsh, where the ground turned to soft bog and mist, something tall moved along an invisible path, dragging its chains. The Lan Slabhraí had no other yards to wander, other steps to trip on, and if he lifted his long feet a little higher when he passed a well, that was his own business. When you wake in the morning, please like, subscribe, and leave a little comment below. Tell me where you're listening from. Your quiet clicks and words are what keep this place lit in the dark. The small traces that let these stories find their way back to you. Come back every night. Let this be your resting place. Good night.